If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button as well as the bell to be notified of future videos. Thank you.
Hello Internet, I must tell you I'm excited today. In the old police where I served, there were 3 elite units in uniform branch. On top of this was the special task force. Now the special task force, something else. Then you had the flying squads and you had the dog units in its various formats. Because you didn't have only an Alsatian, you could have had a bloodhound type of dog, you could have like a border collie, all sorts of dogs. And as I say in one of my books, the dog unit was normally seen as something like the army would use their paratroopers. They would be first on the scene. They were normally experienced policemen. You don't become a dog handler or a dog master just after you leave a police college. Normally you had to serve a year or 2, good behavior, then you go for all sorts of psychological tests, and then you go for the training of a dog. And it's one of the few courses which you can actually fail in the police as well in my time. And a lot of people did fail because you would arrive there and the instructors would summarize your body. The bigger you are, the bigger the dog you get, unless they don't like you. Then they give you the biggest dog they can get. This dog is standing in a kennel thing of things. They're very well treated. I must tell you, the stories of a police dog being abused, not true. Not in my presence anyway. But since we were clever people, we would also arrive with a stuk biltong and then it is die groot gat kry, mooi hondjie, goeie hondjie, and you open that cage, you walk in, and all the instructors and everybody else is standing there with a grin on their face. They want to see what that dog's going to do to you. And then the domination process starts in the nicest way possible, of course. We all love dogs. I can tell you now, if you don't love dogs, you will not make it in the South African police dog unit or railway police dog unit. And then you walk in and then the training starts and it's tough training, I can tell you that too. There's no such thing as a fat dog unit member, it doesn't exist. And these guys would be called out first to every serious crime. But a lot of their work actually was also to save people. And that's why I'm so glad we've got Warrant Officer Steve Leslie here. The man is a legend in East London. He's a legend other places as well. And he's talking to us today because he served 42 years in the different polices, first the railway police, dog unit, then he went over to the South African police, dog unit. He's also writing a book, I understand, and before that he was actually in the Navy. So sir, meneer, he's welcome here. Thank you for coming to us. We're really grateful for you. Let me ask you, where did this start? How did you end up in the Navy? And then you ended up in the railway police, and then you ended up in the South African police, and now you're retired, and now you start working again. Fantastic story. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. It was great to hear from you guys, and it's been a long and exciting career for me. I've started when I was a youngster, still at school. I had a love for dogs. Like you said, you have to have a love for dogs to become a dog handler. And I still remember at the age of about 13, 14, I went to see a movie called The Dog Squad. It was a South African-made movie with Chris du Toit. And after that, I knew that is what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a policeman with a dog. And unfortunately, my dad at that time didn't want me to have a big dog. And I used to take the neighbors, had a German Shepherd, and I used to walk around with this German Shepherd, and I acted as a policeman, patrol the neighborhood. And then I got a call up to national service in South Africa at that time, and I volunteered for 18 months service. I was sent to the Navy in Simonstown, and then I started panicking and worrying, where's my dog unit, where's my dog handling career going to come now? And I'm in the Navy and all this type of thing. But when we were finished our basic training, they have a selection committee where you go to and they asked you, in what section of the Navy do you see yourself? And I said, listen, I've got a dream of becoming a dog handler. And the guy I spoke to luckily was a Christian. And I met him through the Christian coffee bar that they had. And I didn't know at that stage, and later I found him, well, this is a commander, and he's on the committee, and he said to me, look, you know, you can go into the naval police. I said, yes, but, you know, I want to become a dog handler. So he said, well, I've got good news for you, because the Navy has just started training naval policemen with dogs to protect infrastructure and the radar stations and the stores, Wingfield in the Cape. And oh, well, I just said, thank you, Lord, because now my prayers have been answered. And off I went to training in Saldanha for a naval police. And after that, we were sent to Voortrekker Hoogte. Before Bird's Luck, the dog school for the army was in Voortrekker Hoogte. The Navy didn't have their own training, so we went straight to be trained by the army. And when we got there, of course, the corporals and that didn't like the Navy so much, and they gave us a very hard time. And just one little stalky, one little incident that happened with me. They said to me one day, they always used to, you know how it is, they call you on your surname more than they don't worry what your first name is. Leslie, go and fetch that dog number so-and-so and bring him to the vet. So off I went, and I went to fetch the dog, and I saw this was a big Rottweiler, and he was a little bit hair up when I got there, but I didn't take any notice. Almost now I'm going to become a dog handler. I've got to show them I'm not scared of this dog. And I put the chain on him, and I started walking towards where the vet's office was, and I saw everybody was getting out of my road, and they were falling over each other to get away. And when I walked into the vet's office, even the vet ran and closed the door, stood behind the door. And and this corporal said to me, "Are you mad? You know what this dog is?" I said, "No, well, you told me to go and fetch the dog. I'm doing what you told me to do." And this dog was one of those dogs what they used to put between the security fences of the bases, where the stores were and things like that. And it was a dog that wasn't handled. It was too aggressive to be handled. And well, I just think that this dog was so glad to get out of his kennel that he didn't want to bite me at that stage, and I was so glad it didn't happen. But anyway, they told me to take him back quickly, and I did that. And then our training started with the dogs, and as you know, the training in the Navy and the Defence Force was different to the police, because in the way that you have only one handler, one dog in the police, in the Defence Force, you were two guys to one dog in certain fields. In the fields of the guarding section, like we were doing, you couldn't be on duty 24/7. So you had a guy that would work as your partner, and he would work with you with the dog. But as you know, with dogs take a liking to one person more than the other, and they listen better to one person than they would to the second person. And we, myself and a guy, Gous from Port Alfred, here in the Eastern Cape, we had Rex. That was my very first dog in the Navy, and he was a very aggressive dog, and then I was in 7M because I was doing what I wanted to do, and that was great. And the time I spent in the Navy flew past like anything. And then the reality hit me back. I have to go back to Civvy Street and leave the dog behind, which is also very sad. And when I got back, I was working on the South African railways and harbour on the tugs, because I thought, okay, Navy experience, I got a job on the tugboats. And that's when Andre and another policeman, Sergeant Bust, came to me and visited me at my home, and they said to me, look, you are already in the railways. Would you like a transfer over? I said yes, on one condition, that I become a dog handler again. You know, this is like prayers answers again. I mean, yeah, this is the next step in my career. Okay, I'm gonna get, and I got going, and of course I agreed. I went for training in 1976 in the Railway College. Didn't do much training because, as you know, that was the year when the Soweto riot started in South Africa. And, we were more deployed into Soweto to guard railway infrastructure, trains and things like that. We didn't have much training. We didn't even actually have a passing out parade because of the riots and things like that. After that, went back. I worked in East London as a policeman, and then the courses came up for patrol dog handlers. There was a guy before me, Leon Hampel, in East London. He was the first patrol dog handler in East London. And then I went up to the SAP dog school. The railway police was working, training guys in the SAP dog school. And my instructor was Neil Skeppers. He was one of the first guys trained in the railway police as a police dog handler, and he became an instructor. And then after that, I did the course in 1977. I went back to East London and became a patrol dog handler with Leon Hampel in East London, and worked there. And a couple of years after that, we were joined by two other guys. You know, it's not like in the SAP because we were such a small amount of guys. So you were a dog handler, but you also had to do other tasks like attending accidents and drawing plans and all different cases, not only where the dog was involved. But we had to specialize in a field later because we were being, the right word was revved. The terrorist activities and the onslaught against South Africa, the public targets, the normal man in the street started with them blowing up train lines. And the railway police saw that there was a need for training dogs to detect explosives. And we went on courses at the dog school. And then at later years, the dog school, the SAP dog school was expanding, and they asked us to find another place. And we went to Estland Park, a part of Estland Park that was an old farm, and which we took that over and used that as our dog school. And there we trained with the explosives. And I must say, we put a great emphasis on training with explosives because a lot of people travel on trains, and a lot of people use trains not only for drug smuggling, but also for the smuggling of explosives. And of course, to protect and search suspicious parcels and luggage. And also we had the airways and the airports under our jurisdiction as well. So at airports, we had to check freight and people's luggage and all that type of stuff with the dogs. And we, I can say that our dogs were quite top because we concentrated a lot on explosive. Where I think the SAP guys, you know, they were involved with a lot of crime and a lot of other work with their dogs, not so much concentrating on explosives until the later years. But the field, when we came over in 1986 to the SAP dog units, our dog handlers were amalgamated into the dog units of the SAPS, and you know, our dogs, they could see that the dogs were of a high standard. It wasn't that we are the spoories or the railway guys, and you know, the dogs weren't up to standard. Our dogs were tops when it came to explosives and things like that. And I must say, yeah, in East London, we had a good working relationship even before we amalgamated, and we used to work together with the guys on the street and meet at garages and have a cup of coffee together and, you know, discuss the crime situation. And we started helping, you know, where we could, also making arrests in the streets, things like that, because we had the dogs and we could do it. And so when we did go over to there, I knew the guys by name, and it was an easy process to go over and to work with these guys. I mean, it was just like changing a uniform. You're no longer wearing the brown uniform, you're now wearing the blue uniform. And that made it so easy. And I worked on the streets from 1986 until 1996, doing patrol work and normal police patrol dog and explosive guy, you know, doing explosive detection with the dog. Many scenes where we called out, and one of the things that's sticking in my mind is the Highgate massacre here in East London, where the terrorists attacked the Highgate Hotel. And we had to go there afterwards and you know, sweep the place and see if there was any unexploded ordnance and things like that. So, you know, we were involved with quite a lot of terrorist bomb blasts and things like that. My career changed in 1996, 94. South Africa had the elections for democracy and things like that. I saw that things in the police were going to get a little bit difficult as a normal police dog handler, and I was offered by my commander at that stage the opportunity to either go as a tracker dog handler, that's the bloodhounds and things, to take spoors and do stock theft and that, or to become a new field that had started in the police, search and rescue, where dogs are used to find missing people, bodies, investigate investigations of shallow graves and things like that. And also in national disasters, where floods and building collapses and earthquakes and things. So it was between myself and another dog handler. He said to me, whatever course comes up first, I must go, because he had something else that he had to go finish. And luckily for me, the search and rescue came up. And that was a field that I went into. And I thought, yeah, is an ideal opportunity for me to live out my love for dogs and still do the work that I love doing, and I'm serving the community. And I'm away from crime in such a way that I'm not using the dog to make arrests and getting charges against me for biting people and things like that. So I went into this field, and I must say I really enjoyed it from the beginning. My first dog in search and rescue was only 9 months old when I got him. His name was Zara. A lot of people get confused with Zara. Is actually a female's name, but this dog was named Zara. He belonged to Greek people, and they donated him to the police as a 9-month-old puppy. And I got him as my first search and rescue dog. And we clicked from the beginning, and did our training in the dog school. The guy that started the search and rescue in the dog school in SAP was Flip Willifie. He and Stan Gillum, Brigadier Stan Gillum, they came up with this concept of dogs trained to assist in searching for bodies and for missing people and things like that. What's very interesting is that, you know, when the training started, like all training, it's difficult because where do you get, you can't take a body from a mortuary and use it to go and find. It's not like, I know in America, people donate their bodies to science, and then they even donate them to where the dogs can be used to find bodies. And they got a farm where they put the bodies, and dogs can be used to train on. And by us, we couldn't. And we used pigs to train the dogs in the beginning. And then in later years, we were able to get, I think the right word is persuado, or chemicals that were made from America that were made for us, and we were able to use that to put on rags and scents, and for that scent to be there for the training of the dogs. Now, the training of the dogs, if I may just elaborate on that a little bit, is the dog has got to be mad about, like you said earlier, the word apport. He's got to be mad about retrieving. He's got to, one of the tests that we do for search and rescue is you show the dog the tennis ball, and he's like, I want the ball, I want the ball. And then you put that ball, you hold it in a 20-liter bucket. And if he puts his head inside there and trying to get that tennis ball under the water, he's shocked. That's what you want him for. He's crazy about the thing. So with that drive, that he's got such a hard drive, to train him to find people and things is much easier. Where if you've got a dog that hasn't got such a hard drive, the training is going to be much more difficult. So, you had a selection to see, and in the beginning as well, because the first guys that were trained, they came over with their patrol dogs. Now, as you know, patrol dogs are quite aggressive animals. And now they had to find people and not bite them, where they were trained before to apprehend a person that was hiding away or something like that. So there was a big adjustment in the first guys that were trained. And there were some accidents, unfortunately, but luckily it was policemen that were bitten, and not public people, but in the training. And then they decided, no, look, it's going to be better if we get new dogs and start training a dog from scratch. So these dogs were non-aggressive at all, because they had to work between the public and look for missing people. And you must imagine if you're a little child and you're in the forest and you got lost, and this big burly German Shepherd comes bouncing along and looks like a big wolf to you. And if this dog had to start barking and growling at you, you would actually run away further and get lost even more. So the dogs are taught not to bark or show any aggression. They would normally smell on the person that they had found and then return to the handler. We call the refund. The dog would come back to you very excited because he had found this one. He's actually looking for his reward, the ball, because he knows that you're going to give him the reward because he's found the person now. Then you say to the dog, you give him the command, what have you found? What have you found? Show me, show me. And the dog will take off, and he'll go back to where he had found the guy, but he'll go back a little bit slower because he knows the handler's a bit slower than him, and he's got 4-wheel drive and you only got 2. So, he'll wait for you, he'll go back slower, and then you'll be at the person, and then you give him the reward. I'm jumping the gun a little bit there because in the beginning, with the training, you hide away for your dog first, and then your instructor will hold the dog and tell you to run away, and you let the dog watch where you're going, and then you will let the dog go and find you, and when he gets to you, you give him the ball. And then you change it. He'd leave his cap behind, and he'd run away, and you'd give the dog scent on the cap, and then he will later start searching for the person whose cap was left behind until he finds it, and then he's not getting the ball at the victim, so he comes back to you, and then you tell him to go and find the person, and then you give him the reward. The same thing is with when the dogs are finding a live person, they are much more excited, and you know, because they know they're going to get the reward straight away. But when you're looking for a body in a shallow grave and things like that, they would be more calmer, and when they do find and identify a spot and they dig a little bit, you'd have to take the dog away. That forensic guys would have to come in and uncover the body and preserve the scene, that if there are any clues or DNA, anything like that, that the dog wouldn't disturb that. And then only afterwards you would be able to reward the dog, once you know, okay, look, this is positive, this is a body, and then you would reward the dog. With the dog searching for people that are drowned, this was also a field that we did. A lot of people in the beginning didn't understand how the dogs could detect a body under the water, especially in dams and rivers. Not so much the sea. I'll say why with the sea a little bit later. Normally, when a person drowns, almost immediately the body starts giving off gas. It starts giving off part of the skin, the oil from your skin comes to the surface. The gas starts building up inside your body. That's what causes the body to rise and float after a few days. But almost immediately, this process starts happening. And the dogs are trained to detect that gas and that oil that was coming from the body. So what we did, we made a little apparatus, what we called a varkie, and it was a cylinder, and we had compressed air in this, and the smelly stuff was inside the varkie, and we let the air go in there, and it would bubble. Open a little valve, and it would bubble to the surface, first in very shallow water that you could walk with the dog and let him swim. And attached to the apparatus, we had a tennis ball and a nylon fishing line. And this would float on top of the water where the gas was coming out. So the dog would be in the water with you, and he would see the ball, and he would swim towards the ball. With that, the helper or your instructor would pull the nylon, and the ball would go under the water. So the dog would smell, looking for using his senses, looking for where this ball is, and then he'd start smelling the gas, and you would let the ball come up, and he would get the reward. Afterwards, he would associate by finding this gas to getting the reward for what he was doing. And that's how we train them to detect bodies underwater in drowning situations. Of course, with fast-flowing water in rivers and that, it's much more difficult, and the temperature of water plays a big role. The wind on the surface plays a big role, but the dogs are able. And, you know, even in the beginning, the police divers were a bit skeptical of this, and, you know, we got our methods, and they didn't really trust the dogs as much as we knew what the dogs could do. A lot of our guys actually became police divers as well, because it was in the work that we were doing. Most of our search and rescue work was drownings and people that were washed away in floods and things like that. But searching large dams and large water things, we had to use. We couldn't swim all the time because the dog would get tired, and we would get tired, even though we had wetsuits and all that, floating devices. But we had to work on a rubber duck, a rib, and the dog would be on the front of the boat, and you would zigzag across the dam to see if he could pick up the scent. And it's a fantastic thing to see. You know, the dog would be on the front of the boat, and all of a sudden, he would follow the scent down, and you'd come back to the back, and then you as a handler would tell the skipper of the boat to turn, and you'd see you go back on that side again, because now he's smelling, and you're working, and they actually get so excited some of them used to jump off the front of the boat and swim to the gas before you were spot on. And then you mark it, and the divers would come, and they would dive where the marker is, and within 4 meters of that marker, sometimes closer, they would recover the body. I've already had it where I had a captain that was in charge of the divers, and he was not very, how can I say, he was a little bit doubting. He doubted the abilities of the dog. And one day he went with me, and we were working from a canoe, inflatable canoe. And my dog was on the front, and he was sitting behind the dog, and I was rowing the canoe from behind. And I could see the dog was reacting, and I said to him, we must mark it here, because the dog started biting the water from the front of the boat. So I marked it, and then he said, okay, we'll stand back, and he sent one of his divers down on the marker. And he said, oh, why is the guy taking so long? What's the problem? And the guy came up and he said, no, the marker was on top of the body. So the dog was spot on. And from that time on, things got better. It's like with anything in life, you've got to prove yourself and prove that the dogs are really there to assist. The biggest thing is with the human factor is these guys have come to take over our job. They've come now to do what we've been trained to do, and all this type of thing, which is not the case. We were there to assist and become part of the team. Sometimes the dogs missed, it was the condition of the water and the temperature, and there wasn't much gas, and the strong winds as I say, on the surface. The dogs didn't point, very, very clearly. But most of the time, I would say 95% of the time, the dogs were giving you an area which was an area much less. And as you know, was the diving and searching for bodies in dams and in rivers in South Africa, it's not clean water. It's completely brown, and there's zero visibility. So your time underneath the water is much less, because the dog's giving you a smaller area to search. And the danger of, some of these dams, there's old cars at the bottom, there's even old structures where the dams have been built and now filled with water, and the old structures are still there. So it can be quite dangerous diving in zero visibility. The dogs made it more safer for the guys. We did training with the air wing. The dogs were hoisted, had a special harness made for them, with us to be hoisted up and down with the choppers. This was great. My second love of dogs was helicopters. If you see behind me in my little display cabinet, I've got hundreds of different models of helicopters. And that was one of my hobbies, that I collect model helicopters, because I love them so much. I love flying, and helicopters was the best way to fly. You could, like the pilots will tell you, it's a magic carpet ride. You fly in a chopper. It's not like flying in an aeroplane. And we had these special harnesses made, and dogs were trained to get in these harnesses, to go down. And today you see on American TV and these stories, the dogs even got air protection, and they've got goggles and things like that they wear, that they, for the dust and the wind. And it's great. The dog gets in a comfort zone. The thing is with a dog, if you are with him and you are backing him up, and he feels that you are at ease, then he'll be at ease. But if you're nervous and you want to, you don't like what you're doing, and this is a bit scary for you, and then you would, the dog would feel it, and he wouldn't be comfortable. We were taught abseiling as well in search and rescue, to do this type of work with the choppers, and to climb down the cliffs with the dog in the thing to look for bodies for people that have jumped off cliffs or fallen off cliffs, fallen off high bridges, in suicide and things like that. Then we also trained to do confined spaces, work in collapsed structures, buildings that had collapsed, where you've got to crawl between the rubble and tunnels and holes. Did the training with the fire department, Boksburg Fire Department from up in Gauteng, and then those guys were very awesome, and they helped us quite a lot with the training there. We worked, with search and rescue, you don't only work with police guys, so you make good friends in other departments of rescue where you work with the fire guys, you work with the metro guys, the guys that do the ambulance, paramedics, and they get to know you. And, part of the grisly job as well is attending motorcar accidents where people limbs are missing from the scene and been thrown into the veld and bush and things like that, and the dogs we were called to go and search for these missing limbs and parts of bodies, and it wasn't very nice, but it was something that had to be done as well. I can give you many examples where we use the dogs and things like that. I've kept record of my cases that I've done, and I think maybe at a later stage we can talk about the different cases and things. But just I'll give you one or two for a quick to prick your interest. I just came back to East London after being trained with search and rescue with my dog Zara, and at that stage there wasn't a special uniform for us. We had to wear normal uniform, or if your commander was generous and kind, he would let you wear denim jeans and a red t-shirt, which was our training clothing that we used in training. So we wore that. I was lucky enough to wear that. And vehicles, we didn't have vehicles, special vehicles for our equipment. So rescue equipment is a lot of equipment. There's ropes and harnesses and even a boat and things like that. So it's expensive, and we only got vehicles later on in time. And in the beginning, we had to use the normal police vans, attend cases with those. And the one that sticks in my mind, one of my first big cases, is I went to the township. I was called by the detectives, second biggest township in South Africa, Umtanzani, near East London. And the detective told me, look, they had reports from the neighbors that at this house there were two little boys, and all of a sudden they don't see these little children anymore. They just see the adults. The little children have disappeared, and they suspicious. So when we went to this house, it was locked. There was nobody there. And they wanted to break the door down. I said, whoa, you can't just break the door down. You'll have to go to the magistrate and get a warrant, and let's do it properly. But in the meantime, while you're doing that, I will search the outside. I'll walk around with the dog on the outside of the house. And in the back was a garden. And I gave the command to search to Zara. And he ran around for a while, and then he started digging. And I stopped him. And I could smell the decomposing human smell of decomposing flesh. And I called the detectives, and the forensic guys came. And first, the one little boy was found. We were approximately a year old, the children. And underneath that one was the second one. And they were wrapped in curtaining. The mom was married. The mother of the children was married. She went to Johannesburg to look for work. And when she was there, she met somebody else and had fallen pregnant. And then she came back to East London, had the children. But then her husband at the time said, look, this is not my children. I don't want to support them. And he was very angry with her. So she went to her mother, the granny of the children, and said, look, we've got to make a plan. And they did make a plan. They poisoned the children. That was found out later in autopsy, and then they buried them in the backyard. But the moral of the story is that you must be careful what you do, because your neighbors get suspicious if they don't see anything anymore. But I'm just they're saying that on a lighter note, but it's quite a horrific story when you're dealing with children, especially little ones like that. It makes you hard. It does make you hard. It makes you, what's the right word? Cowboys don't cry. You don't look for berading, debriefing and things like that. You keep quiet. You keep it to yourself, and you lose feeling of you. It just becomes another part of your life, and you don't realize it actually affects your family, and it affects the way you treat them and the way you feel towards them. You don't show that much affection as you used to, because you're scared you're going to become soft and this is going to affect you. I've had colleagues that have told me, look, Steve, I've taken this 4-year-old child out of the river now, and every time I take a child out the river or the dam, I see my child. Then I used to tell them, but you must stop, because this is going to affect you too much. If you can't do the job, then rather step away and carry on, do something else, because it's hard, it's difficult. When you're dealing with death, you're dealing with pain, but just that 5% of recovering a live person. And one of the first that I recovered was a 2-year-old boy. Also, his mother took him to the bush and left him next to a river and returned home. And then when asked where the child was, she ran away. So they informed the police, and the police called me out. And next to the township, there was a big bush area which I searched with the dog at night. And then I heard the little child crying. The dog, he was sleeping, the little boy. I surmised he was sleeping, and when the dog smelt on him with the cold nose, he got a fright and he woke up and he started crying. And then the dog led me back to him where he was, and I could also hear where he was because of the crying. And I took him to the local hospital where he was treated and taken over by the welfare organization, because he was abandoned now by his mother. But it's a great feeling to find somebody alive. I can't describe it to you. It's just like, this is great. For all the training, all the hard times, and all the scary times, and all the bad times, and all the rough stuff. And now all of a sudden you find a live person. Great feeling, really nice. And it's hard to describe. I often say, when I went on pension, I said to a guy that was interviewing me as well for the local newspaper, I said, I would just wish that I knew what happened to the people that we had saved. Do they know that they owe their life to a dog that had found them where they could have died? I mean, that little boy could have woke up and fell in the river, or, something else bad could have happened to him. I mean, that child now must be deep in his 20s, 30s even now. So I just wonder if he knows that a dog by the name of Zara saved his life. We also do rescues where the dogs aren't involved. You get people that are stuck in rivers, in motor vehicles, in floods, and they still alive in the motor vehicle, on top of the motor vehicle, and then we have to go do the rescues and things like that. Also, yeah, by us there's a bridge. It crosses over from the one side of town to the other, from the east to the west bank, and it's a Beco bridge, and it's about 50 meters high. And unfortunately, it's become a place where people go to commit suicide, and quite a few have jumped off and died from jumping off there. And one morning I was on my way to work, and I got a radio, well, the radio message came over on the police radio that someone had jumped off the bridge, but the people could see the guy was still alive in the water. So I rushed down there, and there wasn't time to put on a wetsuit. I stripped down to my undies, and took my fins, my flippers, what we call fins, and my PFD life jacket, personal life jacket, and put it on and jumped in and swam to him. And he was bobbing, you know, going down, coming up. And then when he came up, I grabbed him and I turned him around and I held him and I said to him, I'm taking you out the water. You know, please let me die, I want to die. I said, not on my watch. And I swam him out. And while the time I got out, there was an ambulance waiting already and took him away to hospital. But that's also like the last year of it, and you don't know what happened to the guy afterwards, you know. Also, at that same bridge, there's a little bit further down, there's another bridge, smaller bridge. It's a rail and motor vehicle bridge. A youngster of 14 also jumped off, and there were some fishermen on the side of the river, and they saw this, and they contacted the police, and also I was close by, fortunately. Did the same thing, swam out to him, and he was holding on to the side of the pillar of the bridge. I took off my jacket, put it on him, and I swam him back to the side. And he had a sad story. He was staying with his granny because his mom had died, and in the township, and he said to me he didn't want to live anymore, he wanted to die because nobody worried about him and all this stuff and stuff. Also, I handed him over to the ambulance and the welfare people. It's some of the rescues that you do, you know, where the dogs aren't always involved. Is there anything you want to ask, Chris?
Yes, I've got a lot of questions actually. You know, I wish more people would actually take the time to talk to the old policeman. And I will demonstrate as follows. I was a young constable. And of course, we looked at the dark unit people almost as, well, something special. And they were fairly big, strong men, and they had booster snorer, and they looked like they could use their fist and their boots, and they could, but then there were the dogs. Especially one of them in East London, around about there, called Bismarck. And this Bismarck was something else. I'm sure you recognize the name. Now,
Yes.
Then an auntie arrives at the police station at the child's office, and she said, we must come and frighten her child because he's naughty. And I thought to myself, well, I'm 18 years old, I can frighten the devil himself. Not the child, definitely. So I was quite keen on this because she was quite pretty, actually. And the dark unit constable was the older constable. He flipped his mood. There's no other way to say this. He got upset like you can't believe. And he said to her, madam, what will that child do one day if he's in trouble and he's scared of the police and he does not have a compulsion to go to the policeman there and talk to him?
Yes.
And that's when I realized something in life. I realized that a lot what you know about the police isn't true. And it's like any other job in the world. You only hear about the wankers and the horrible ones and the ones who's, you get slapvatten everywhere. They won't be in the dark unit. That I can guarantee. Dark unit will work them out. But I've got a lot of questions for you if you don't mind. In the first place, I want to ask you, is it possible for a dog to get seasick?
Well, I haven't had that experience with the dog to get seasick, but I think I forgot to go back to that story about the dog searching on the sea. The reason why it's difficult to search on the sea is because of the movement of the water, the ocean. Your boat is not steady, so when the dog is smelling, the boat might rise and then he loses it, the scent, and it comes down. So it's very difficult for him to actually point on the sea because of the movement of the boat. It's not that he can't smell. Body that's drowned in the sea water or in fresh water still going to decompose. Though maybe a little bit differently. But in lagoons, sea lagoons, and that, the dogs have found many bodies of that as well in the salt water. So the salt water doesn't affect the smell of the scent coming, for the dog. It's just the movement of the boat in the sea that makes it difficult. So if it's a very calm day, he might be successful and things like that. If there's but there's always movement, there's current, there's waves, and so we didn't operate so much. When a person had drowned in the sea, we would do what we used to call shore patrols. We would walk on the shore, on the rocks and on the sea sand along the coast and see if the body hasn't washed out, because some people would drown and then because of what they've eaten and the contents of their stomach, and especially people that drink or drinking alcohol, they would surface quite quickly, and then the sea would wash them out onto the coast or somewhere, all depending on the current and things like that. So that was our task mainly as in drownings in the sea, and that is to check on the coastline and see if we could see the bodies that had washed out, if they did wash out.
Okay, now that's good, sir. I want to ask you something. In my time, the civilian people had a strange habit. I don't know why, but they want to stroke this dog. They want to come close to the police dog and try to say call. And that dog might react violently. So I'm asking you now, sir, 42 years service, should you approach a police dog and just start stroking it or do something to it?
No, definitely not. Not any dog, actually. I tell when I used to give my talks to schools and that as well, which was part of my job, to educate children about dogs. You start with the little ones in Sabay and that. Don't pull a dog's ears, don't pull his tail, because he can't talk, he's going to bite you. Show them the dog's teeth, and you see the big teeth. If you hurt him, he's going to hurt you. And you tell them, if someone's walking with a dog, you just don't run up to the dog and want to hold him and touch him, because you don't know that dog will interpret that gesture that you do as a threat, not only to him but to the handler or the person that's with the dog. In my career, I've never had any problems at home with my dogs. I always kept my dog at home. There was a trained patrol dog, which is an aggressive dog. I had a kennel at home. When my kids had friends around, the dog would be in the kennel. Because, kids, we had a pool and that at home, and they used to run around and shout, the children a lot. And that dog might just interpret that that shout that one of the kids are getting hurt or somebody's getting hurt, and he will want to intervene and bite the child unnecessarily. I tell people as well, if you've got a trained dog that's trained to do man work, being aggressive, protection work, it's like having a loaded gun, because you don't leave a gun on your counter where anybody can get hold of it. So when you've got a trained dog and he's not there to protect you when you're busy, then you lock him away. You put your gun in the safe, you put your dog in the kennel so that he's there when you go to bed and you want him to protect you, that's when he runs around and he's got free rein of the house. Dogs are, an animal. Any animal can misjudge the situation as well. As I said earlier, a person might come to you and all of a sudden stick out his hand, and the dog will interpret it as a threat. But I must say, in the search and rescue field, again, as I said, all the dogs weren't allowed to be aggressive at all. But I had a situation once where I had to look for a guy that was threatening suicide, and he ran onto a golf course. A youngster, he was about 16, 17 years old. He was quite high on drugs and had cut himself with a piece of glass, and his parents were frantic, and I went to the dog to search for him. And we found him in the golf course, and he came towards me with a bottle in his hand. And I said to him, look, he was very aggressive towards me. He said, calling policemen names and all this type of stuff. I said, look, my boot, if you carry on coming towards me, this dog's going to bite. Now, I took a chance because I know my dog wasn't aggressive, but he didn't know. He saw the police and the police dog and things like that. And he actually did try and do something to me, and my dog actually grabbed him on the pants and pulled him on his pants. So, it's just, the dog is a dog, and he interprets the threat, and he wanted to do something, and he did it. So it's not that he was ever trained to be aggressive, but it came naturally. The protective instinct came out, and he protected me. And he got some handcuff burns on his arms going back to the police vehicle as well. Yeah.
I know that one of the big problems with the police divers, they were part of a flying squad in my time. And they came from all over. It's not that you had like a police diver who's only a police diver. He did all sorts of normal work. He can be a detective. He can be whatever. It's not attack diving. I just want to tell people it's got nothing to do with special forces attack diving. That's something else. That's where you use a rebreather. You're never deeper than about 20 feet. And you go and plant a bomb there against a ship or something like that, limp and mine. This is rescue work, in essence, and finding evidence. The evidence can also be a guy throw out his pistol in the water, he wiped it like you see in the movies, he forgot that his fingerprints are on the bullets. They don't know that, so you can go and find this thing. But the water is so dark, they tell me, that you cannot see your bubbles as you exhale, so you don't know what's up or down. You can only feel it by the coldness of the water as you go deeper, and anybody who dive before will know this. So it's a very dangerous thing to be a police diver. That's why we normally tether with a strong rope so they can be pulled back. And therefore, I can quite believe that the dog unit, the search and rescue part, would be very welcome. Really welcome, because if they can go and pinpoint where that body is, it could really help. And then you can just go down and perhaps you can grab this thing. But now I've got a question for you. There are two bodies in the world which smells something dreadful. One is where a guy committed suicide by gas in his car. And that car has been standing in the veld for a few days. And it's warm in Africa. So by the time you get there, that body is all sorts of bloated. But I'm not making light of death. What I'm trying to say to you people here is this is what policemen face every single day of their lives. So cut them some slack if they're not too friendly at times. You don't know what that guy has seen that day or the day before that. And God knows what he's going to see the next day. And he knows that. But he still loves his job, still put the uniform on, he still goes there. And we've learned with that, the gas body as well as the drowned body, if it's been on the water long enough, never to smell through your nose. You take your breath through your mouth. I'm wondering if you also had that trick, and if you learned it or did someone tell you about it?
What we used to do a lot as well is put Vicks on your lip, just to help with the smell. But the biggest thing is that if you've got quite a strong stomach, you can handle it. But some guys, you know, they just smell it and then they want to throw up, get sick. And that sets everybody off because, you know, you're hearing the sound of someone getting sick. It's a mind thing. It gets in your mind and you also want to get sick. So I used to tell the guys, the first one on this boat that wants to get sick must go stand at the back of the boat. And don't let me hear you, because if you do, I'm going to chuck you in the water. And I'm just making a joke about it, but it's I can't describe the smell. It's not very pleasant at all. Another thing, what we used to do with bodies and that as well. People, you know, they don't understand what when you got the body, you place him in a body bag, especially in the water, because you place him in the body bag, because it's a plastic bag with an opening at the one side, and you slip the body in and then close it and take the body out. And you get him in the bag as soon as possible, and still in the water, because as soon as you get out the water and in on the land, that's when you start, the smell gets actually worse, because you have moved him and the gases are moving inside and things like that. But also another thing, when it came to children, unfortunately, I never tried to, as much as possible, don't concentrate on their faces. You know, you'd look at the body and then not too much on the face. You had to look at the face because you had to get a statement, you know, what condition the body was in for investigation. So you couldn't just close your eyes and not look. You had to see the wounds, and if there were wounds and things like that, you had to look. But you tried not to concentrate on the face too much. With the dogs again, for this gas, as I explained with the gas, I just remembered this now. When the body, especially if it's a fresh body and you don't smell anything, and you bring that body out in the body bag, and you open the body bag that the police photographer can take photographs, and the dogs used to go and they used to smell straight at the guy's mouth and nose. So that told you that is where the gas is coming from. You didn't smell anywhere else on the person. You just went to the mouth, and you, of course, don't let him stay there too long, because especially if there's family and things around there. And but it shows you, even, you know, that's where the gas was coming from inside the person. Yeah.
I always say to my wife, there's two things in life which makes me nervous, extremely nervous. One is the guy eating with his hat on his head. I automatically start looking where the sergeant is, even though I was one myself, because I know what's going to happen if the sergeant sees a guy eating with a hat on his head. God will not have mercy on his soul, I'm telling you. And the other thing which also is make me very, very nervous is when I see a choke chain on a dog being put on in the wrong way, where it will not release. So I'm now asking you, sir, can you explain to us how to put a choke chain on a dog properly, without the dog being hurt or damaged, because you, the human being, has put that thing on the wrong way. And I see it often in civilian street.
Yeah, the big thing is to the test that we were taught is put the chain on your arm, link it through the ring, and then put it on your arm and pull it tight, and then let it go. If it releases on its own when you let it go, then you know you've got it the right way around. So you open it with, once it's been set through the ring, open it with your hands in a wide, as wide as the chain is, and then you just slip it over the dog's head. You know, make sure that when you put on the lead, it's in the ring, and it pulls tight, it releases again.
I'm wondering if in railway police dog school, did you also get untrained dogs? In other words, you and the dog get trained at the same time.
Yes, exactly is the same as the SAP. As I said, we started our training in the SAP dog school. So our training was based on their training, and exactly the same. And the railway, when we went to our own little school, we also used to get donations from the public. Most police dogs are donated to the police. In those days, there was very limited breeding, not like today where they've got the Ruderplaat breeding center, just other side Pretoria in the Gauteng area, where they breed a lot of dogs and things like that. Nowadays, in the old days, as I say, the dogs were donated from the public. You know, people buy a nice little puppy, and then the puppy grows up and starts digging out the favorite rose bushes, and then they don't want the dog anymore. So they donated him, especially if it was a shepherd, a German shepherd. They donated him to the police. You know, in the old days, we mainly used German shepherd dogs. The Alsatian, as some people used to call in the old days, or the GSD, German shepherd dog. Those were the breed that the police used the most. Even today, people see a German shepherd, oh, it's a police dog, you know, because it looked like a dog that the police used. Today, there are the Belgian shepherds, the Malinois, the border collies, the Labrador, any dog that can be used to perform the task that we need him for. I mean, they even got little Jack Russells that they were using to do searching of containers and ships for stowaways in Durban. These dogs were used to work between the containers because being so small and so easy to be lowered down with the handler from a helicopter onto the ship to search the ship and then taken off again. It's not such a hassle like with a big dog. And they use these little Jack Russells to do that type of searching. Unfortunately, a lot of police dogs were killed. Let's not beat about the bush. You know, they were used for serious crime. Murderers, robbers, rapists, home invasions, serious housebreakings, and the dogs came in the line of fire, and a lot of dogs were killed and wounded, and this started, you know, the people also not wanting to donate dogs to the police because they saw that this was a problem that their dog could, as he becomes a police dog, could die. But I mean, if you look at it this way, a policeman goes out every day and you don't know what you're going to face. You know, you can't only face the good stuff. So you might put on your uniform today and then in an hour or two later, you're in a gun battle with armed robbers or something like that. You don't know. And the same thing is when you're chasing, the dog is chasing a robber or somebody running away. You don't know if that guy's going to turn around and start shooting at the dog or at you. They normally aim at you first, and that's, you know, unfortunately for them, sometimes that was their mistake because then the dog used to take them out. And I can guarantee you, each policeman that dog dies in the line of duty, it feels like his colleague that has died. It feels like part of him that's missing. Even my old dogs, when I had to have them put to sleep because they got too old and they couldn't walk anymore, they got blind, things like that. It hurts you. It's because you're an animal lover, you're a dog lover. It definitely hurts you. They're part of the family, you know. So the public are under the impression that the police dog is just a tool that are used by the police. That is definitely not the case. If you're a policeman and you're in the dog unit, like you said in the very beginning, you have to have that love for dogs. So if you love something or somebody, you don't want that person or that dog that you love to get hurt. And if they do, it affects you. And then, you know, you have to start all over again. You start with a new dog, and you've got to go through all that procedures again. Though it's not as long as the first time you get trained, and you get a shorter period because you know what you're doing. You're not a person that's hasn't been trained before. So you're an old dog handler, and they call it the Oman's class, old dog handlers class, and then you get a dog that sometimes you're lucky you even get a dog that is already trained, and he's been given back because his handler has become an officer, or the guy has transferred out of the dog unit for some other reason, didn't want to carry on as a dog handler, and then you might be able to get a trained dog. But normally cases you start with a raw dog, as they say, a dog that knows nothing.
That is one of the sad things, actually, is that the moment you become an officer, you do lose your dog. And I know about a lot of people who absolutely refuse to become officers for that very reason.
No, that's true. And in later life, when I thought, okay, I've had enough now, I did apply to become an officer. But we won't go into that because it was in the New South Africa. And but I was quite happy to stay where I was, and more likely to stay where you were, you know what I mean? If you were settled and you had kids at school and you didn't want to move out of where you were, I was very happy.
If I can ask you a question, it's a bit of a tough one. I remember in my time in the police and also at the dog school, at one stage they were training their dogs, especially the patrol dogs, not to take food from anybody for logical reasons. I mean, because some criminal might come and poison your dog. That happens. But some of the dogs actually have a price tag on them, especially the ones who's working with drugs. I mean, there's syndicates out there who will pay somebody good money to shoot that dog or to kill him because the dogs are so effective. And then we found out that so many of the dog handlers were dying on duty that it became a problem, because if a policeman is shot dead, tragic as it is, then we struggled really hard to get the dog to eat again. Because he also goes through emotions. You said to us that when you lose your dog in the line of duty or due to old age, or another thing which I dreadfully hate, is where a retired general comes and he gets hold of a retired police dog. He is not trained. He doesn't know how to work with that dog. So that grieved me considerably. I would not mind if a general was perhaps a dog unit member in his young days, but I really get upset when people use this. They don't know how to work with a police dog. I would like to hear your views on that. But at the time at the railway police and later on in your career in the SAP, did you also had this problem that the dog is now have to be retrained to be able to eat after his handler perhaps passed?
When we did our training in the railway police at the dog school, they didn't include food refusal anymore, because of that same reason, where the handler will be sick and then the dog wouldn't eat from anybody, even the handler's family wouldn't be able to take care of the dog. They did that in the first years, I think, because the dog stayed at the handlers' houses, and they were scared someone would come along and poison the dog at the house. And then the force or the standing orders changed for dogs to be kept at a central point, at a dog unit, and all dogs had to be kept where they're under 24-hour guard, that the dogs are looked after. So the food refusal training fell away for that very reason. It's very difficult because once you the imprinting, the imprinting of this into the dog, it's very difficult to get it out of him again. For him now to accept food from somebody else. Of course, if the dog is starving, he's going to take food from someone in the end. He's only an animal. But it was a very difficult situation, and that's my personal opinion. I think what I've heard and what I saw, that they changed the standing orders that dogs will be kept at a central point. Though, like myself, I had to apply to keep my dog at home, being on standby almost 24/7 and all the time. It was difficult for me to jump in my car and ride to the unit and get my dog and put him in the police vehicle and then go attend the scene. So that the time was involved. When you're dealing with even with explosives and bomb call outs in those days, time was of the essence. So you had to get there at as soon as possible. And we had the right officers that understood, that we didn't want to be anything else but be ready to go when we had to go. And that would help a lot, that we could respond straight from home.
Of course, the relationship with you and your dog was so close that I remember in the barracks, the single quarters where that dog quite often was sleeping not in his kennel down at the police station, but right in the bedroom of his handler, who took great delight to release that dog on you if you gave him a dirty look or something. Luckily, we could run away. Probably the only time ever we could run away from a Alsatian, because it was slippery on the highly polished floors. And of course, the dog wasn't taking it too serious either. But talking about untraining a dog, it reminds me of something I've seen, where you take a patrol dog who is trying to do the apport command, where you will go and fetch something, bring it back to you. And then you take that same dog and you train him on explosives, and now he picks up that explosives and he brings it back to you. I've seen some pretty funny incidents with that. How do you untrain a dog?
In the training with that now, you will stop doing the retrieve work. So when the dog is searching for explosives, he will wear a special harness. So he associates wearing this harness to searching for explosives. And when he's got that harness on, it's like he's got his uniform on now to find explosives, and that's what he does. He starts searching for explosives. Even with search and rescue, we had the problem that the dogs would find a knife or something that was used in a crime, and then the dog would try and pick it up. So we had to also retrain the dog to sit or to lay down to show out where the knife or the whatever might have been dropped by the person involved in the crime. And that's also to prevent the DNA or anything that's on that exhibit to be soiled or damaged. So the training went in that direction. In the beginning, I think you'll remember there was a thing called squaring. We had a square of ground 25 by 25, and then 4 objects would be placed inside there. And then the dog would have to go and search for them, find them, pick them up, and bring them back to the handler. So that all changed with the explosive training and with the search and rescue training. That all changed where the dog had to sit and physically point the exhibit out to the handler. The only dogs that were used to retrieve the objects and things were the drug dogs, because the drugs couldn't injure the dog. And, the dog starts scratching on a suitcase or something like that. If it's drugs, it's fine. There's no problem. But if it's a rigged bomb and the dog starts scratching and biting on it and trying to lift it up, that can be a problem here.
It is very expensive to train a dog, and it's really an intense program. It takes months. I mean, the dog masters took 6 months. I think the patrol dog 3 months, and I'm not sure about the rest of them, the sheep dogs and what's the other one, explosives. But it's intensive. It takes a long time. How will the police keep these men? Because I've heard that a lot of them left for more money somewhere.
Yes, it happened in the early 80s for us when the Sun International Group opened casinos all over South Africa, and they wanted security dogs, and they were looking for trained handlers, and they were offering quite a lucrative package to these guys, you know, and it was a big decision because you're leaving that security of the police with your medical aid and your pension, but when you have to think of your family and how you are living, a lot of guys took their risk and they went over and did do the work for the Sun International Group. And a lot of guys also in later years left to go to Iraq to work for private security, also searching for explosives and things at embassies. And I'm not fully clued up with that, but I do know that we did lose a couple of chaps going to Iraq as well, and joining up private security firms.
I wish to thank you for your patience in answering me. It's not often that I get the chance. In my time, the patrol dog people had like a yellow gold dog unit badge on the uniform, and they were very proud of it, and they should be. It's the same as paratrooper wings in the army. They deserve it. And then when they become a bit older and a bit wiser perhaps, and they would go for training as explosives dog, this badge of theirs changed. It had like a red background. And the dog masters themselves, those are the tracking guys, the guys who's doing the bloodhounds, Doberman cross, rural area tracking. That's what they do. These guys had no badge whatsoever. They were like detectives now. They didn't even wear a uniform anymore. And yet in the SAP anyway, they were the oldest of the two groups. They came first. They were the first dogs in the police, and then came the Alsatians only later. Now may I ask you, Warrant, with my normal long boring explanation where I want to go. Was that the same in the railway police and Navy? Could you distinguish between the two dogs, the explosives and patrol dog, by the way of a badge on the uniform? And when you became a search dog, search and rescue expert, did you have your own logo then as well, your own emblem?
Yes, it's a very interesting question. To tell you the truth, there is only one badge, and that's the golden dog head badge with the German Shepherd head on it. Later years, they did issue badges of a bloodhound's head for the guys when they had to wear uniform, for the tracker dog guys. But the background of that golden head, the guys did that out of their own. It was something that they got away with it. I know I had a badge with a blue background, and some of the other guys had with a red background. If you had a strict officer, he would grind you for wearing that, because that isn't official police badge. The only badge that there was that the dog honor-koppie, as they said, you know, the dog head, and that. It was actually quite interesting. In the early years, they wore it on your shoulder, on your arm, where your sergeant stripes come and things like that. With the sergeants, they had it between the castle and the stripes in the old day, and it was worn there. And the warrant officers was above the warrant officer badge. Then it all changed, and the only place where you could wear it was above your name tag, and that's where it was official. Standing orders were changed, and that's the only place where you could wear it. You know, we as I said earlier, we started with the search and rescue in 1994. And I told you also about the red T-shirt and the denims, and we didn't have a uniform. A lot of the guys had to work in the normal field field dressed. And as you heard of the cases, you're in rivers and mud and things like that. And this wasn't very successful. And later years, how can I say, not invented, they designed an overall that the search and rescue could wear. And I just want to show you, this is the hondekopie, the normal one that comes on the uniform. So in later years, we got a little bit more of a standard where everybody throughout South Africa, all the search and rescue guys wore these overalls. And there was no mention of police on the overall. It was a non-militarized overall. So, you know, if you're working on and you could wear it overseas, you wouldn't be recognized as a policeman, you'd be recognized as a rescue official. That was one of the reasons they didn't put police on it. In later years, they made a badge with a canine search and rescue on it, where the dog was being abseiling, and then there was another where the dog was in a boat. That was a badge that we put on the overall, just to say that we are, you know, search and rescue. That the people could to see the difference between maybe a metro guy and or a fireman and then the search and rescue. So, you know, things are evolving all the time and things change all the time. I mean, like I said, we used the normal police vans in the beginning, and afterwards we were issued with 4x4 vehicles, which we needed, and with winches and bull bars and racks on for boats and stretchers. And, you know, I must say the police it took a while. It was, you know, you're impatient, you want it now. But as you know, things turn slowly, and in the police, they grind on. And they saw that this was a necessity, that we needed these vehicles and these clothing and such. They also gave us thermal clothing when if we had to search in the mountains in the snow and things like that. We had thermal clothing. We were also supplied with wetsuits and diving equipment and PFDs, personal floating devices. And even the dogs at a later stage, in the beginning, they didn't have their own PFDs. So they were, you know, only came later that they drew up plans and they made these things, and they got a company to provide this PFD for the dog. Because you must remember, if you're swimming down a river for many kilometers, the dog's actually swimming where you're floating because you've got a wetsuit on and the jacket. So the dog's actually working much harder, and he's got to swim from side to side. He's not swimming in a straight line because he's searching and he's looking if he can find the body that maybe is washed up on the bank or hooked on a tree. And so, you know, the dogs used to get tired. They actually used to come swim right up against you, and we used to hold them and that they can get a bit of a rest, and then you let them swim again. But then the PFD for the dogs came, which helped a hang of a lot. Also helped a lot if you were searching on a boat or in rapids and things like that, and the dog fell off because of the rapid, and there was like they had a handle on top of the jacket, so you could actually grab the handle and pull the dog back onto the boat. And I see even now there's private people that are using this when they take their dogs on their private boats, and that it's a good thing, you know, can get the dog, especially if the boat's quite high and you can't get back up on his own, so you have to grab him somewhere. So it's good to have a handle there on the PFD.
In the old police school, at police law school in Pretoria West, they had like swimming pools for dogs. Well, it was fantastic swimming pools because you could walk into it. It's like a dam, and then you walk into it, and the dog. Now there, I had to find out not all dogs actually like to swim. In fact, mine did not like to swim at all. So would this be part of your test for search and rescue to ensure that dogs actually do enjoy swimming?
Yes, that is part of the criteria when you test the dogs. Like I told with the tennis ball, putting the tennis ball in the bottom of the drum of water, he must put his head in. So if he's got no fear to do that, then he'll swim. But a lot of people think that all dogs can swim. They actually not. That doesn't always come naturally to a dog. If you've seen dogs in water, a lot of them splashing with their feet up above the water, and they're like trying to stand on their hind legs. And that's a dog that doesn't know how to swim. Because a dog should swim just with his head on top of the water, doing the doggy paddle at the bottom with the feet, and just keep his head above the water. But if the dog hasn't got that fear for water, and we can train him for the search and rescue, if he's struggling a little bit, that'll become over time with the training. He'll get used to swimming properly because we'll just help him along. As long as he's got that instinct to refuse to go in the water. That's the biggest thing. You mustn't have the fear of water. It's the same with the handler. Unfortunately, a lot of guys that try out for the search and rescue, there's criteria. You have to be a dog handler. First of all, you have to be a dog handler for more than 2 years. You have to not be scared of heights, not be scared of water, have no fear of confined spaces, and be willing to work with dead bodies and things like that. So there is a criteria, and before they accept you into the course, they used to send the instructor out to the different units for the guys that applied to go, and then they came and they would test you here before they even sent you to Pretoria. That you wouldn't waste money by sending people there and find out, look, you've got to swim across this pool, and the guy doesn't want to swim across because he's scared, or he can't swim. And then it's useless to be in search and rescue if you can't swim.
Was there ever an incident where you and your dog were swimming there down the river and the crocodile came swimming after you, or a snake or something horrible?
Where we are, fortunately, there aren't any crocodiles left here in this area. It's more up in the Gauteng area and northern parts of South Africa. But we do see a lot of snakes. Fortunately, most snakes will leave you alone because they want to get away from you. And the dogs don't worry about them as well, luckily. And, leguavons, or the monitor lizard, as it's called in English, looks like a baby crocodile. You get a fright when you see it at first, but they also get out your way as quick as possible. Quite a bad thing happened with me and my dog once when we were going down a river. The dog was wearing his harness because we were searching for school children that were washed off a bridge and were on the back of a truck. And the river was flowing quite strongly, and the dog got caught in a stream and was pushed underneath overhanging branches. We call that a strainer because the water goes through, but the person can't go through. And the dog was actually hooked up in these branches. And I was in the water, and I shouted to the guy that was on the bank. One of the guys that later became an instructor, I said to him, his name was Paul. I said, "Paul, my dog." And he dived in through these thorn bushes and managed to grab hold of the dog on the harness and held his head above the water because the branches were pushing. He would have drowned. And then I managed to get out further down and run back and pass him my diving knife. And he cut the dog's harness, and the dog swam free because the branches were actually holding him fast on the harness. And because of that incident, we changed the whole harness situation, where we had the full body harness on the dog for searching. Then we moved over to just a thin little collar that would have a release clip. If it hooked on something, it would jump loose, on its own. So it's trial and error with these things, and I was so lucky that the dog didn't drown. We have lost a few dogs that have drowned. Guys have been going down rivers, and the canoe, the inflatable canoe, overturned, and the dog was trapped in a weir and he couldn't get out. handler and the divers that were with him were nearly died as well, but they were rescued by other divers on the side. But unfortunately, the dog didn't make it. In the history of search and rescue since 94 until today, we've lost 3 handlers in search and rescue. The first guy was in Brits. He went into a dam on his own, looking for a body, and he got entwined with water plants and things like that, and he couldn't get out, and he must have panicked because being on his own, and then he drowned. So that's why it's a thing. One of the first things you do is you tell the chaps, look, you never attend a scene on your own. You doesn't help you try and be a hero on your own when you're gonna get unique. Like the saying goes, you dive alone, you die alone. If you do these things, you got to have backup all the way. Then the second guy, he was also a handler and a diver. They dived in the Katsi Dam looking for a helicopter that had crashed from the Sutu Defence Force, and they went down to recover the bodies out of the helicopter. It was a very deep dive. I think it was nearly 70 meters that they had to dive. Unfortunately, this guy had a flu a couple of days before, and he didn't tell the supervisor that he had flu. And the pressure being underneath the water, and that caused his the fluid in his lungs so he actually drowned in his own fluid. That was very sad. The guy was from Bloemfontein. He was on course with me, so I knew him personally, Michael. And then recently, in the beginning of this year, a guy that was my partner, Pierre Marks, he became a captain after I left. And he became a captain, and he didn't have a dog, but he was still assisting with the search and rescue. And there was people, bodies washed up on an island, and the local farmer had put a rope across and went across to recover the bodies. But while he was doing this, the river had risen even more. That the rope was under the water, and he was trapped on the island. So Pierre arrived there with one other diver, and he went over to the island and recovered the 3 bodies with a rope, pendulum them back to the side where the diver was, and then he put his life jacket on the farmer, and they were going to go across, and Pierre got stuck in the rope that was under the water that he didn't see, what the farmer had put up, and his legs got entangled with that rope, and we call it foot entrapment, where the force of the water is so great, pushing you from behind, pushes your face. That what Pierre did is he released the farmer that he could wash out, but he couldn't release himself because his legs were trapped in the rope, and unfortunately he drowned. And it was a very good friend of mine, and it was devastating when I heard that. You think of, what is there something that I didn't tell him? Is there something? But it could happen to anybody, because even he did try use his knife, because his knife was gone out of the sea. So he did try use his knife to cut his legs free, but the force of water is so strong. Once you trap there, there's nothing you can do. And that's we received a military funeral, and it was quite sad. And, as I say, I worked with him from 2000 until 2016. So I knew him a good few years, and we were very good friends. And sad when you lose somebody that you know. So you don't expect to lose a colleague like that. It was very sad indeed.
Well, may rest in peace here. I recall when I was in his London last in May of this year, I think I've heard of another dark unit member. He was off duty but got shot by some criminals who were stealing a car or doing some robbery. I'm not sure if he was part of search and rescue, but I'm sure you can tell us.
No, he was a patrol dog handler. He was working what we call crime prevention duties, when you work with unmarked vehicles and things like that. And he had just got a call from information that a car that was hijacked was in the Quigney, or suburb of East London, and he went with the car and he didn't take any backup with him at that stage, and the only backup that he had was a guy from a private security company, and he confronted the hijackers, and there was a altercation and shots went off, and he was unfortunately hit in the bull. He had his bulletproof on, but he was hit in the neck. And this guy, and the security guy, came to his assistance, and the hijackers managed to flee and get away. And Swanee is now Swanepoel, surname. He's in a wheelchair. He's got no feeling in his bottom half of his body. He's partly blind from because they said he had a slight, or not a slight, he had a stroke because of the loss of blood going to his brain from the gunshot. And we didn't think he was going to make it, but we praise the Lord that he's much better. He's at home. He's had therapy and all this. He's still in a wheelchair, and he's got quite slight sight back in his eyes. His brother was also in the police. Let us know that he was driving, and then Peter Swanepoel, he said that number of that car is so and so and so. So he said, "Oh, how do you know?" He said, "No, I can read it, you know." So he's getting a little bit of his sight back. So we're very happy with that. Yeah. These things happen quickly. You know, today the criminals, they've got no respect for the police. They'll take your life as quick as anything. And most of them, I would say 99% of them are armed today. It's not like the old days where they just had knives and things like that. They've all got firearms today, and they don't hesitate to use them.
Yes, I think we will keep this handler in our prayers from now on. I'm glad he survived. If he's listening here, we will definitely be praying for him and his family. I want to ask you on another note, if somebody is listening here and want to contribute to the unit to search and rescue, would that be accepted if they have perhaps old diving bottles or ropes or whatever they have? Would the police accept any donations?
I can't speak for the diving unit itself now, but if they want to contact them, they can always ask, because I think there are regulations that they're not allowed to accept donations. It's got to go through the right channels, as you know. They're scared of it might be corruption or something like that. And that's a big word for us in South Africa, with corrupt officials and things like that at the moment. So you can approach them, but and ask them personally what must they do if they want to do that. What you said the other day, I didn't elaborate on that about the police divers. There's in East London, there are a dive supervisor. He's a captain, and then the other divers all work at different branches of the police. Their normal task is normal police work, whatever branch they are at. And then when a dive scene comes in where the divers are needed, he would contact them, and then they would go and attend to the scene. So it's not a permanent unit in the police at the moment. They're trying to establish that to make the divers do all water-related crime and incidents, as well as body recoveries and drownings and things like
Would you accept a female officer in search and rescue?
Yes, we have. We have got a young lady, which she was from Elliot, and she actually made me very proud, because we had to do a body recovery down a steep krans, and it was a very windy day, and the pilot said to us from the chopper, he wants the lightest person, because of the he wanted to have all the power possible on the helicopter, if he was any trouble to get out there. So he didn't want to carry too much weight going into the gorge. And she went down and bagged the bodies, and they were hoisted out by the helicopter, and then they went back and got her out. And that made me very proud, because I've got no qualms. If a person, and it doesn't matter who you are, if you can do the work, then great. They all looked up to me. I think I was like a father figure. We were 10 later. We went before I went off. We were 10 handlers in the search and rescue throughout the Eastern Cape, but throughout the country there were only approximately 55 to 60 guys that were that were trained for search and rescue. So it's a very specialized unit. As I said earlier, you're working with other people's horrors and other people's sadness, and it affects you. If you're not that type of person. Fortunately, I'm a Christian. I'm a believer, and that helps a hang of a lot to get you through these situations. Also, debriefing. Personally, I used to speak to the guys, tell me how you're feeling. Don't keep it inside. You talk to me and I'll talk to you about my experience. And also, I must say, the police in the later years, not in the beginning, in the later years, we were, what's the right word? We were given the opportunity to go to counseling and have counseling done by professional people, which is a good thing.
May I ask you, what's your success rate if you are called out on a search and rescue? Now, I do understand that even finding a body is a success, because it gives closure to the family. And at least if you have a body, the investigation can start. Well, you can deduct a lot of things from a body. So what would your success rate be in finding something?
In most cases, we are successful. And I don't say that we are successful straight away, but we never stop searching. You must understand, we have to work in vast areas, so we would attend the complaint as soon as we get it, go then see what we can do and search. And you can't continue searching all the time. So you've searched where possible the person could be, like a forest or a mountain, and you haven't found anything. So you have to go to step B. Step B is to now see if someone hasn't taken this person away, or other avenues of investigation. But it doesn't stop. With the dogs, we want to use the dogs to the best of our advantage and to get results. The quicker people contact us, the easier it is for us to find them. And that's a big thing that we had to fight with the local police stations and that, because they used to tell people come back in 24 hours. And there's no such thing. There's no waiting period when a missing person's involved, especially if it's a child or an old person. If your mom or dad or your little child is missing and the policeman tells you to come back tomorrow, I'm going to be very, very upset. I'm not going to accept that. you want the police to react straight away. We learn to decipher our cases as well, if I can put it that way, because you used to get quite a lot of call-outs on a Sunday. That this guy was at a party at Village B, and he stayed in Village A, and he never returned home. So we used to say, okay, well, we'll get there on Monday, because you sort of suspect that this guy's had been indulging too much and probably sleeping it off somewhere under a tree or something, and he'll return by Monday. Most times we were notified that he had returned home, that they had returned home. It's search and rescue is like it's a thing that you want to do as quick as possible and get it over with and get results. It's not always that easy. People get washed down rivers. I mean, we've had cases where the body has gone 21 kilometers and maybe even further. Sometimes the body's even landed up in the sea. You know, I'm talking about the Transkei Wild Coast, and those rivers, when they come down in flood, is mighty rivers. There's big, a lot of water coming down. And so we keep searching, and that's when we use other resources like the helicopters, and we fly along the river, see if we can see anything. And the other people want you there just after it happens. There's not much you can do when a river's in flood like that. So we go back every day, and then hopefully the body will have surfaced or hooked on something, on a tree or on an island, and we would recover the body like that. You know, you're dealing with people, family, and their emotions are quite high. And you have to explain to them, look, I can't put my members' lives in danger to go down this river while it's in flood like it is now. We've got to wait for the water to subside a little bit before we, you know, you don't want to get a whole lot of people killed, you know, for someone that is already has no chance of surviving, gone down and drowned down the river. So you've got to be politically correct, and you've got to be menselijk. You've got to be human. You know, you've got to understand the feeling and the loss that they're suffering, but you also got to think of your team as well, that they don't put themselves in danger.
The old British South African police, the Rhodesian police, could actually track from out the helicopter. They had the dog running on the spoor below them with some kind of a day glow jacket or something on it so they could see him. And so they would follow in the helicopter, and this dog would just run that terrorist of those days, the days for Member of Parliament, whatever they have, run them down. And then, of course, your fire forces would come in. So while you were talking, I was wondering if it's possible for your dog to actually smell the water from a helicopter. I know it's not financially a very good idea, but if a river is really in flood and you can somehow fly a few feet above that river, can he smell that far down?
No, it won't. It's the same as with the sea, because of the movement of the helicopter as well, and also the downdraft from the rotors. You know, that's such a strong force of downdraft. It's blowing everything away. You know that scent will never stay on the surface there. It will be pushed away by the downdraft of the helicopter.
Can you tell us a few things about search and rescue, perhaps the greatest search you've done and perhaps the worst?
Yes, I've got quite a few, and the ones that I told you about are the ones that I did with my first dog. And we were very successful in the beginning, and I was so eager to start working and do this job that for the first 4 years, I didn't have leave. I didn't take leave. Those days, the police paid a standby allowance. You were paid a standby allowance. It wasn't you didn't have to claim overtime, you got an allowance. And there were only 3 of us, myself in East London, Dion Stradham in Port Elizabeth, and Rocco Malaber in Queenstown. And we had the whole of the Eastern Cape, 3 guys. So we were very, very busy, and we traveled many, many kilometers to attend to different scenes. One that sticks in my mind, which was very sad, they even made a documentary about it. It was called Criminal Minds here in South Africa. It was about the Fairhead murders. The people's surname was Fairhead, and they were on holiday at the Fish River. And the mom and the little girl went down to the river she wanted to fish, and she was asking the people asking her mom and her dad to take her please to the river. She wants to fish, she wants to fish. And they went down to the river, and just the mom and the little girl. And there they were attacked and hijacked and taken by these 3 guys and driven away with their own car, the victim's car. And we were called out when they didn't return home, and the guy from Port Elizabeth went to the scene, and then they called me to give him back up. And we had trackers, we had guys from private tracking company that were assisting with the tracking of the vehicle, and we even had the choppers up, and this was at late at night. So we searched and we didn't find anything. We slept just there where we were, next to the road, waited for first light and carried on. And we got a breakthrough. One of the suspects the vehicle was seen in a small township close to King Williamstown, and all the guys rushed there, and then the suspects bailed, and we caught the youngest one. He was 16 years old. We caught him, and then we started questioning. They were questioned by the detectives, murder and robbery guys, and he said they had put the bodies by a river, and the word they use in Xhosa is in Lambo, means a river. But now it can be a dry river, or it could be a river with water in. It's put there with that in there. That word means a river. You know, if you can understand what I'm trying to say. That so we went to the biggest river that they had crossed, and that was the Kaskama River between Fish River and King Williamstown on the N2. And we went searching around there, and we searched for many hours. And I was walking with a guy, it was a visual tracker. He was seeing, and he found a balaclava next to the road on a steep embankment. And I'll sent my dog down the embankment where he found the balaclava, and he recovered he found the body of the young girl and her mother. They had both been raped and murdered. And at that time, my daughter was exactly, my middle daughter, my second eldest daughter was the exactly same age as this little girl, 11 years old. And I was very, very angry. I don't know if it was a way to express my feelings, but I was so angry. I wanted to commit murder. I was so angry because it was so unnecessary. And you know what's so sad about the whole thing is this little girl, though she was only 11 years old, she was quite fluent in the Xhosa language. So all the plans these guys were making, she was understanding what they were saying. So you must know the terror and the absolutely horror that she was going through, knowing what was going to happen to her and her mom, because these guys, they wanted to, get rid of them and carry on with the car. As I say, the first one, and then following up in the house in that same location, the guy didn't want to come out, and the dog was sent in, and he was arrested by the patrol dog guys, and then the third guy was also arrested, and they were all sentenced to life in prison in the regional court, which was a first for this area as well. They held the court case in Port Alfred. The Supreme Court came to Port Alfred. Normally, Grahamstown's a seat for the Supreme Court. They moved it to bring justice to the public, that the public of that area, the communities could see that justice has been served for this case. So that was very, very, very sad. That worked a long time on my mind. And then quickly, I'm sure we're running out of time, but another case that I was involved with was to do with Satanism. The police were called to a headless body lying on the train line near one of the suburbs of East London. And they went there and they couldn't find the decapitated head. They first thought it was a train incident where the train had knocked the guy off and decapitated him. But then we received information from a young lady that said these two schoolboys and an adult male, 30 years old male, that they were bragging that they had a skull, a human head. And she, heard this and spoke to a detective who she knew, and then we went and we picked these two guys up, and they were hard as nails. They didn't want to talk, and being underage, the one was 17 and the one was 18. The 18-year-old was a little bit softer. The 17-year-old was as hard as nails. He denied everything, didn't want to say anything, who he's with and who, and then we cross-examined the 18-year-old. We saw he was a little bit softer, and with these parents present, we told him, look, your brother said this, your younger brother said it, you were the one involved with this more than him. And then he broke down and he confessed that they had actually murdered the guy under the instructions of the 30-year-old, who was a Satanist priest. He told them, look, we need a head. We need for the human head for sacrifice and for worship, for the devil worshipping. And they found a vagrant in the bush near the train line, and they actually attacked him and cut his head off. Terrible. They then informed us that this Morris guy was the high priest of the Satanists, and the detectives were searching for him because he wasn't at home, things like that. And in the meantime, I took one of the youngsters with me and some of the detectives, and we went down to there was a small river at the bottom of the train line and a little bridge. And he said, no, somewhere in this river, they put the head in a bag that the water creatures and that could eat the flesh away, that they could get the skull. And but he can't go further because there's demons there. And I said to him, yeah, the demon is there because you're scared, because you know the truth's going to come out. And he said, no, he's frightened. I said, well, I'm not frightened because my God is stronger than your demons. I've got no fear of your demons. And but the strangest thing happened. And on the bridge, they used to have Satanistic rituals. There were black candles, and the Pentagon star was there, made in black wax. And when I wanted to cross the bridge with my dog, he just sat down. He couldn't. He refused to walk over that. I actually physically pick him up and carry him over that bridge. A dog that's 6 years in search and rescue, where he's been down rivers and crossed thin little planks and climbed mountains and abseiled, and all of a sudden he just refused to go over this place where they held these rituals. But anyway, we went over on the other side, and he was fine on the other side, no problem. I let him search, and about 20 minutes to a half an hour search, he went into the river and he was pawing at something between the rocks. When I went there, I saw, okay, here's the skull in a bag. And of course, the whole time, the police video unit was following me. And because this guy was doing sort of a pointing out, but though he refused to go further. But I said to the guy, just leave him with the detectives, me and you just go further. So everything goes on video, where the dog refused to go over the star and all that type of stuff. And these two guys, which I was very upset about, they turned state witness in court. Both of them turned state witness. They had a very good lawyer who told them, look, turn state witness. And the older guy, Morris, he was sentenced to 30 years imprisonment for the murder of this baby. And another interesting fact is that when we went to Morris's house, went into his room, it was painted completely black inside. There were tombstones, angels from tombstones, his head's been broken off, and upside down crosses. And the fingerprint guys and that took photographs of the contents and the inside of the room. And of course, his mother said she didn't know he's involved, and he's staying in the same house. And the stink of that room, it was like terrible. But the fingerprint guy contacted me the next day, and he said, Steve, won't you please come back with me to that house, because none of the photos I took that night had come out. They all were black. Nothing. I mean, he's a professional guy who takes photos for crime for many, many cases, and this film was just so strange that the film didn't come out. But the second time in the day it did. Well, those are two cases that will stick with me, and of this case as well was made into a documentary as well called the Dark Prince, also available through the TV channels in South Africa. I'm fortunate enough to get a couple of copies of it. I do phone, and organize copies of the programs, that I've got it for interest sake. Yeah, and then many cases, I've had a case where a guy kept phoning the police and saying there's a body buried in the yard of a house in a suburb in Kanubi. It's close, about 21 km from East London. And he kept phoning and saying there's a body buried there. And the local police used to go and have a look, but the backyard was paved. So they thought this guy's a nut, and he's wasting their time. And then he kept on phoning. He was persistent. And one of the guys got an idea, and they said, "Oh, let's contact the search and rescue dog handler." And I was on standby, and I went out. I used my dog, and between the granny flat at the back and the house, she started digging on the paving. So I started removing the paving where she dug, and I could straight away get the smell of decomposing body. I called the necessary people, and then the investigators and forensic guys, they all arrived, and we found the body of a young guy that had run away from home in Durban, and that was didn't tell his parents where he was going to. Came to East London, worked as a barman at the Kanubi Hotel, got involved with drugs, owed the drug dealers money, and when he couldn't pay, they dealt out punishment, and unfortunately too much, and they killed the guy. And they panicked, and they buried him in the yard where they were staying. They were staying in the granny flat of this house at that time. And the owners of the house moved out, and these guys also moved out, and this guy actually moved with them to Johannesburg. But when he was there, his conscience was working on him, and he was feeling guilty, remorseful. And he kept phoning the police and telling them, there's a body in that yard, there's a body in that yard. And they went up to Joburg and arrested him there and brought him back. And he confessed to everything. He said he didn't mean to kill the guy, but was a fit of rage because the guy owed him money. And then we had to inform those poor parents of that guy who've been searching for their son for many months, that your son's now in the East London mortuary. We suspected him. You have to come and identify, because they had his ID book. I found his ID book at the hotel where he was staying and things like that, because he never returned there, so they kept all his stuff for him. And then when we did inquiries, they had his ID book, and then we saw he was from Durban, and we found the Durban Central, and then they said, look, yeah, yes, this guy's on our computers. He's a missing person from this. His parents who came, and they had to do the unfortunate identification of the body. Yeah, it was people murder and sometimes not premeditated, sometimes a spur of the moment, but there's always like drugs or something else involved that trigger these things off. Not very nice.
Yeah, I started my police career in Kanubi, so that's why I know that area fairly well. And Kanubi at that stage, whether it's true or not, I don't know, was a major Satanist type of hangout. And we would often find dead cats and beheaded cats and all sorts of bones, and these candles you're talking about found them. And I also recall raiding a Satanist place, and you really do find those upside down crosses and everything is black, and you can feel the evil, I must tell you. Some people here might think we're joking, but you really need God in that circumstances. You need to do a prayer to protect you. Even though we don't feel these things here, you can feel it.
Most definitely. I made it. I don't want to talk religion, but I made it a point before each search that we would pray. It didn't depend on it, whatever search it was. You know, if it was a missing person or a murder scene or looking for a shallow grave or whatever, we would pray first for guidance, firstly, and then for protection as well. I believe we're dealing with different nationalities, you're dealing with different religions, but as long as your faith is strong in what you believe in, and you can face all different situations. I don't think I would be able to have come this far and complete 20 years of search and rescue if I wasn't a believer. I don't think so. That's my honest opinion. I can only thank God that He's been with me all the way. Otherwise, you know, you can't do it on your own. Very difficult. Very, very difficult. Not for such a long period, anyway.
Well, Warrant, I want to ask you about something. I know you worked only in East London, but I do know you would move around in the area. And I also know that you probably know about the Van Stadens Bridge, Van Stadensbrug, which is very close to Port Elizabeth, I believe. It's a very high bridge, is right? It's really magnific. It's really magnificent. I'll put a picture in for you people. And I believe there's a lot of people also there who jumped. And I also believe that there's a lot of Satanism going on underneath that bridge. So I wonder if you can tell us a few words about it, please, if you know anything about it.
Interesting thing about to talk about Van Stadens River Bridge, they have now put big like fencing up on the sides. The phones are still there if you want to phone crisis line, helpline, whatever it's called. And the Christian community, we have this thing in South Africa called Mighty Men, thing, group of guys that come together, and they put on the mountain opposite the hill, or mountain is hill, opposite the Van Staden's bridge. They put up a big cross. And since this cross has been there, before that, I'm speaking under correction, but I'm sure it's something like 99 people had committed suicide. And in the last few years, since that cross has been there, the suicides have almost, if there were 2 more after that, well, that was a lot. But they went down to the bottom of the bridge. There's like a compartment almost at the bottom of the bridge, and they did a cleansing ceremony there, praying and that as well. The effect of someone jumping off that, I've had the unfortunate task of fetching somebody that had jumped off that bridge. In the early days, when we, as I said, we were only 3, and Dion wasn't available in PE, and I had to come from East London to go and assist and look for the person. First of all, it's very rocky, many big rocks at the bottom, small little stream that runs through, and very bushy, lots of bush. So even from the top, you can't see the body once it's fallen through into the bush, and you have to walk up that ravine next to this little stream and physically search for the body that that the person that has jumped. And it's not an our sight to find somebody that has hit those stones at a hangover velocity. It's the body actually burst open. It's incredibly difficult sight to stomach, if you can put it that way. Yeah, it's. But I'm so happy that they've done this. This guy also, he gave a talk. I was fortunate to be there at this meeting where he gave a talk, and he said they get asked all around the country where things like this happen, if they would come and put crosses up. So, you ride sometimes and you see a cross on a hill near the town, and you think, oh, well, they maybe put it there just, for being any sake, not for a reason. And a lot of the times it's for a special reason. There might be a lot of motor vehicle accidents in that certain section of the road, or suicides like Van Staden's, different things where people need prayer, and just that sign that the cross is there.
Looking back now, there's some youngster looking at this episode, and he wants to join a search and rescue dog team somewhere, perhaps not in the police, but perhaps somewhere. Do you have any advice for him?
Yes. First of all, I would say don't physically or don't more mentally get involved. I know it's difficult, but you have to try and, as I said earlier, that you distance yourself from the victim and from the family. You have to be on the outside, because if you get emotionally involved, it's going to really work on your nerves. And you have to be able to turn yourself on and turn yourself off. Think of the task. You must think of the task of what you're doing with the dog. You're trying to find the missing person, to give closure to that family, and then your job's over. How they deal with the grief, how they deal with the situation, you've done your task. Same with any crime scene. You've found the body, you've assisted to recover the body, be it in the ground or under a building, or under, like I said, under the paving. Once you've done that and the body's gone, you've completed your work that you trained for. That's the work that you train for. Same as when you're doing recovering a body out of a dam. Your dog's pointed, the diver's gone down, and he's found the body. A lot of times you find the body where the dog is pointing because the dam's not that deep and you've got your fins on as well. You feel there's something there where the dog's pointing, and you sort of lift it with your foot, and you recover the body yourself, because a lot of children drown in water that's not more than 2 meters deep. And so once you've got that body and you've put that body in the bag and you've given it over to the forensic guys on the side and the investigators, your job's done. Go to your vehicle, get undressed, take off your wetsuit, sort your dog out, put him in the kennel, and write your statement then, or tell them you'll give the statement later, and then you leave the scene. Because as soon as you get involved and you stay there, and it's, there's crying and there's cursing and there's all this, why did this happen and that, and then you start thinking, well, you know, why did it happen? So you mustn't get emotionally involved in it. That's my honest opinion. But then again, like I said, that 5% cases where you find that live child, that makes up for all this horrible stuff that has happened. Just by finding that live child or live old person or any person that's been missing, you know, finding them alive. It's a reward that can't be explained. It's just a fantastic feeling.
Warrant, I have to ask you a question, sir. There was a joke. I don't particularly like this joke, but you know, we have to have a sense of humor in the police as well. So I'm going to ask you a question, sir. Why is it that the dog unit have like stars, the police star on their doors, but not at the rear where the dog sits?
That is for the policeman to know where he must get into the vehicle, and the back door where there wasn't a star was for the dog to get into the vehicle.
Yes, because the dog actually knows where to get in. And
Yeah.
I want to tell everybody, if you were laughing here, there's something called RIM. And you can go and ask any dog unit member, what does that mean? And you'll find out. You'll find out what RIM means.
That's right.
That's the attack command, isn't it, sir?
That is, yeah. That's the command to attack, or to chase and to apprehend. Saying that that's a feared word. If you running and you hear somebody shout "Ramon" behind you, then you know there's a dog coming. If you're a dog handler, you know that there's a dog coming behind you.
No, that's true. I've got good news for you people here. I've asked the warrant if he will come back and tell us more. There's a lot of things we can talk about. I know when you give a command, RIM, you actually point out to the target, you know, to the guy being bitten. So the dog will normally hone into this guy. He's not going to grab anybody. But you never know. So the best advice is if you hear that command, you just stop in your tracks and pray to God that dog's not going to grab you. But we've come to the end now. We've come to the end of this episode. So once again, thank you so much. It was wonderful. For me, going back to the old days was really great to learn about the days after me. Even better, we had some problems with the internet. That's part of life these days. Can't do anything about that. I wish to say here that his wife demanded 2 slabs of chocolates actually from Switzerland for all the hard work here setting everything up. Madam, I will keep my word. Don't worry about it. I will bring it. To the rest of you, if you have any questions, please leave it below. If you want to come and talk to me, there's an open door. Come and talk to me. Just contact me. We'll get hold of you. And until we meet again, God bless you all.
God bless you as well.